Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, both in person and online, for the 2024 State of the School Address. My name is Tatiana Brown. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a third-year master's student here. I started in 2021. I'm also doing a degree from School of Public Health, and I'm really grateful that it's allowed myself more time to spend with the Evans School. It's been a wonderful home, and I'm with you today in my role as a student representative for the Dean's Council. I also sit on our Equity and Inclusion Council as well. And we just have our meeting that they're coming up from. But this role is, I think, a very exciting one. UPSA sat in this role before me for 2 years, and I think when I was asked to join by Dean Jody last summer, I was obviously very honored, and I think for me, it means a lot that we have student representation, especially in terms of strategic visioning for the Evans School. I came to this university because of its commitment to anti-racism, and I really felt like this was a place where I was going to be able to learn the tools to make change in systems level policy. I feel like that's been more than true, and it's been an incredible place to learn. And so, yeah, very grateful for the space to join you all today. And yeah, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's event. I'm going to begin with a land and labor acknowledgement created by two former members of our Equity Inclusion Council. Yeah, let's ground ourselves today. And so the University of Washington is built on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish tribe. It is essential to acknowledge the people on whose land we live, learn, and work, as we seek to improve and strengthen our relations with tribal nations. We acknowledge that this country was built on land theft and genocide within Indigenous communities, and enslavement and forced labor within the Black community. Colonialism has ongoing impacts that requires our active undoing. At UW Evans, we are committed to learning about our role in colonialism and racism while actively reviewing our systems, policies, and procedures through an anti-racism lens. We encourage you to join us and continue deepening your understanding of your place within that history. Residual impacts today and tomorrow. What kind of ancestor will you be? Okay, so we launched this ritual of an annual address in 2002, and it's wonderful to join you all again for today's event. This is an important opportunity for us to gather, engage in collective sense-making, and really hold a forum for discussions about the school and its relation to the larger environment. In terms of our structure for today, in a few moments, Dean Jody Sanford will share an address, and then we're gonna have an open Q&A session. For those in person, please hold your questions until the Q&A time. We'll have a moderator walk by, and then they can get your question when the time comes. For those online, there should be a chat function, so please put your questions in whenever they come up, and then we'll address them during the Q&A time as well. Our virtual hosting team will help aid anyone putting questions in there to make sure that we collect all of them, and if not, please make sure to let someone know. And then following this address, we're hosting a post-event reception with food and beverages across the hall in the Fremont Commons to provide more opportunities for you all to connect. So it is my pleasure to invite Dean Jody to the podium to share her reflections on the past year and vision for what's ahead. We are very grateful for your leadership and excited to hear what you have to say.
So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. As Tatiana mentioned, this was the third time that I've done this address, but it's only the second time it was in January, because the first year we had to postpone it because of Omicron, which kind of sums up what it was like at the beginning of my time as Dean. That first year was a lot of stop and start and trying to figure out which way was up. I will also say that this year's address was a little bit harder for me to pull together. And I think it really was because during the holiday time, I read a few novels about global pandemics, and then started to watch television shows or movies about the end of the world as we know it. And then I had to think about the interaction that I had with a member of my family, an older member of my family, who started to talk about the despair he was feeling. And I watched the reaction that that had in my sons who are in their early 20s. And I just really got into a place of like, the world is really going to be more and more intense. I think it can all kind of put you on the edge. And then I reminded myself, as I try to do, that my mindset directly affects what I see and what I do. And that really probably the only choice that I have and that any of us have is around, are we going to move to a place of despair? Or are we going to believe that we as individuals and in community have a role to try to be part of the stuff that's good in the world? And so from the position that I have as the Dean of the Evans School, I want to offer you my sense of the state of the school, and really to invite you to think about how you and how we can be part of trying to navigate this fundamental choice between kind of despair and paralysis, or engagement in strategic action to try to make this world we're in better. Now, don't get me wrong, this is actually a really real choice. And the times we're in, like, stuff is difficult. There may be a lot of political discussions about the facts of the matter, but the reality of it is we are experiencing tremendous environmental degradation. We are hurting the planet. People's lives and families are being impacted by this. That's causing pressure on them. They are migrating in ways that they have never had in the history of the world. We have persistent social inequities around race and class. We obviously have war and armed conflict in Ukraine, in Yemen, Ethiopia, Syria, and obviously the ongoing tragedy in Israel and Palestine. We also have the reality that work is changing. There is the possibility and the terror of what artificial intelligence is going to be doing to our lives. And the other thing that I really noticed in my own life post-pandemic is that there used to be these day-to-day interactions we would have, going to the grocery store, going on the bus, just these little like touch points with people you didn't even know that in my life always felt insignificant. But now in this world where I can have my groceries delivered or my dinner delivered to my door and I don't even know who brought it to me, those little moments of human interaction, I miss them. And I feel like it's part of what ails us a bit. Some people say that this is the new status quo, and I'll tell you, like, it is hard as an individual. It also is hard for me in this role because I feel like part of what ails us is that we are losing the belief that what we can do together is responding to these situations. And because of this role, I'm brought in front of a lot of public groups to talk about the state of things. And I show this slide, which is data from the Pew Center about public beliefs and trusts in the federal government. And the data don't look as bad if you're thinking about state and local government. And, you know, politicians often get the critique, but public agencies, the ones that Evans School are connected to, nonprofits aren't immune from this. When you ask individual people, they'll say, oh, I appreciate how that person helped me who works in the government. I love the National Park Service, or I really believe in Social Security. But overall, there is this real sense of who can any of us trust anymore, right? And a visual that I found helpful is this one that really says part of why people aren't trusting institutions is because they have experiences when their own expectations of being treated well aren't met. And so that then fuels this distrust, which then makes them check out and say, I don't want to be part of this. And it really is this kind of reinforcing dynamic that I think we need to be attentive to at a place like this. I also think it's notable to me that in the last 4 months, higher education has also come into the limelight. We're really under pressure, under fire, with unusual vitriol. Now, universities are not perfect. Anybody who knows me well knows that I would say that. But they are a place where facts and history and ideas need to be examined and interrogated. And suddenly that tradition of inquiry is suspect. Now, I do think there is a kernel of truth that perhaps we have gotten out of practice, even in universities, of having hard conversations and disagreements. I think that's because there have been really public risks, right, of disagreeing in public, not wanting to get canceled. But I really believe strongly, and I see it happening here, we need to step into moments of disagreement, listen, try to learn, share facts and opinions, and have conversations that matter. Because if we don't do that in universities, we can't expect people to do it in democracy. And this is what that skill is what we need right now, in my opinion. To me, what's notable is at this moment where the political rhetoric is getting really extreme, higher education is one of the institutions that's coming out under fire. And yet higher education is a place of free thought, a place where transformational experiences can happen that help people build skills and learn how to engage others in ways that they couldn't before they came, particularly people who care about evidence, equity, and justice. Yet, given the fact that everyday people are reading these headlines, we in higher ed need to be able to demonstrate our impact, talk about it, and in my role, create organizations that can deliver it. So, I actually feel proud of how we're trying to do this at the Evans. We have been building a community. We're becoming more resilient, and I know that we're doing impactful work. We responded proactively to this environment in 2021 when we said, what are we fundamentally about? And people in this room said, we are fundamentally about trying to inspire public service and democratize what public policy looks like, and we're going to do it with these values underpinning how we interact with each other. We also got real when we articulated our mission and said it isn't just going to be about teaching and learning or generating things that don't matter because they're only sitting in scholarly journals. We have a very ambitious agenda as our mission, and for me in this role, these words have been anchors for everything that we do. They really helped us develop, I think, some specific strategies and use our national reputation and our position in the Pacific Northwest to try to respond to this time. Now, the larger political context is having an effect on us. We were meeting earlier today with my Dean's Council, and I was saying, this political environment and the noise is changing people's understanding of their calling. We see nationally fewer people are saying, yeah, I want to get a master's degree in public policy and public affairs. Those numbers are going down over the last decade. I'm also seeing the impact that it has for people who are working every day in public institutions. Some of these people are the targets, threats, right, and violence. Others of them are working in organizational contexts where they know their procedures are totally outdated and yet they don't know how to respond. But one of the things for me is we have to make sure that we're reaching both of those audiences with clearer pathways so that they can find us and get support to be the kind of change makers that they want. So at Evans, I think we're taking this all in stride, we're adjusting, and we're leaning in. Because I'm an organizational scientist, I want to offer the idea of organizational resilience. Now, this is an idea that came out of research in emergency preparedness and crisis management. And one of the things we know about organizational resiliency is that while it is impacted by planning and resources, it also is significantly influenced by the mindset that people bring, the values that they have, and the shared practices that they develop. So resiliency is about investing resources when times get tough to allow really cool people to be able to innovate. It's about cultivating new values, seeing mistakes and saying, yeah, it's a mistake, but we're going to learn from it. It's also about creating new ways to be together. On Wednesday, the new provost came to visit us, and as we were talking with her, a number of people remarked that one of the new practices we have at the Evans School is that faculty and staff work together on a lot of projects now as collaborators. And God knows we had a lot of small group conversations in the last 3 years about what are the strategies and tactics we wanted to develop with each other to be the kind of school we wanted to be. I was also thinking about last year at this address, I was talking about my forays into learning how to scuba dive. And I was terrified, and I was using it as an analogy to what I wanted us to be doing on our racial equity work, because I think doing that work well can be very disorienting for white people in particular. But even in that area, I feel like we are demonstrating organizational resiliency. We are making intentional adjustments to the new environment, and having new practices like quarterly check-ins at staff meetings and faculty meetings about what we're doing, rather than waiting for the end of the year, a final report to come out. So to show you some evidence about organizational resilience, I have a resource, and we asked people in this room to share with us what are some of the things that you're most proud of that we've done in 2023. And we've benefited from the talents of Bryce Erlandson to create a video to walk us through it. So, Bryce, take it away.
The Evans School is a world-class school of public policy and governance. It gets involved and it prepares the next generation of leaders, whom we should remind ourselves are not just born and do not fall off trees.
What was so funny about that product is that we asked people to give us things that they were proud of, and it just kept growing and growing and growing, right? Which is, to me, one of the pieces of evidence of organizational resiliency. Another piece of being transparent about 2023 is that we do this annual snapshot that we use a lot to communicate with people who aren't in this room, to see videos like that or come to see our work. And there are copies up here for those of you who want it. The slide up there just shows, we are engaging over 440 students in our 5 educational programs. There's significant growth in other educational opportunities that are listed there. We have 115 faculty, staff, community instructors, and researchers that are engaged with this place, and 37 volunteers, including members of my Dean's Council, who are in the room. The current financial picture there actually looks a little bit better than what we're actually experiencing, because this was booked in June. But part of the things I'll tell you about what's planned for 2024 is going to help us stabilize that as well. So the question in my mind is, how can we continue to demonstrate our resilience? In 2024. I think we built the muscles, and I actually think we're really going to need it for the year that lies ahead. Current events are going to continue to be really, really challenging, and the rhetoric is going to increase, and it's going to be a little bit relentless. Part of my own personal resilience is I put down the dystopian novels. Not going to do that. And actually what I've been starting to do is read a little bit more history. Because 2026, believe it or not, it used to seem so far away, that is going to be 250 years since the founding of the United States. And for me, I find it helpful to realize that there have been very stressful times in the history of this country that have pushed us in ways that I'm only now beginning to really understand. People found a way through it, and we will find a way through it as well. in my New Year's card, I included a quote from historian Heather Cox Richardson, who does a daily blog about current events and puts them in historical context. And I find it so helpful because she keeps on reminding me that democracies are never finished. We need to seize our roles individually and collectively in trying to improve what is. And because frankly, among all the other options, democracy still offers the best chance of delivering what's needed for and valuable in human life. So one of the key strategies we have at the Evans School for responding to this circumstance is we're educating leaders. We've been talking about this more clearly now as creating pathways for public service. And many of you know we have been leaning in to work with undergraduates in the last 2 years in non-credit programs that are touching UW students, students in the region and throughout the whole country, getting them to be excited about public policy. So we're going to continue to do that work in 2024 and raise more resources to do it at a larger scale. In fact, it's also interesting to me that the organizational resilience literature says there's a couple of ways that organizations can respond. They can either, when they're feeling conflict, they can either junk it all and do something new or really build from their strengths. And the faculty and I have been talking about what is the way we want to do this at the Evans School. And it is really evolving and building on the foundation of our world-class program. So we've been using this metaphor of an educational ecosystem. And we talk about how the MPA program and others grow in this landscape, and we want to be building from the best of what we have. We're proud of what we've grown. And the implementation details of each of these things matters. So our legacy program at the school is the Masters in Public Administration. And this program puts equal emphasis on policy and management, which is really evident in the program structure, the curriculum, because it's really focusing on equipping students with the intellectual and practical skill sets that they need to design and steward sound public policy at all levels of government. Our executive master's program is a work-compatible leadership program that's really designed for mid-career professionals. It's taught in a hybrid blended format for busy professionals, and it blends academic rigor with real-world experiences that give students the ability to effectively address the workplace challenges they face in real time. The PhD program changes policy and management researchers with a sophisticated understanding of theories, mixed methods, and structural inequality through mentoring and through customized course planning. Beyond these legacy programs, we have just begun to implement some certificates through strategic partnerships with new institutions. This is really to help those people who are working in the public sector right now who wouldn't find us other ways, but to give them new developmental tools so that they can refresh and push forward the change that they know is necessary, but they don't right now have all the skills to do. We're really trying to unbundle the master's program and target pieces of it. The first one that we passed, that has started in January, a few weeks ago, is partnerships with 8 state and local agencies. So Sound Transit, Department of Children, Youth and Families, Healthcare Authority, among some, are sending their people to us to build practical skills and knowledge so that they can bring more equity and effectiveness into public services. We're going to be asking the faculty to approve another certificate. This one's focusing on resilient local government. Really that's being developed in partnership with State and County Managers Association. I want to say, because there are a number of people in this room, I know that the actual implementation of these programs takes an incredible amount of work. For example, we needed to open up some of the program silos that we had to allow students from these different programs to be in a classroom together. Now, for those of you who don't know the University of Washington bureaucracy, you wouldn't even imagine I would say those words out loud. But those of you who work in the University of Washington bureaucracy know that it takes a lot of extra work to make that a reality. I also think that we have people who are having to think through course schedules and the details of that. How do you redesign? How do you create blended learning environments? We also have people who are constantly thinking about how to improve the classroom experience. So in 2 weeks, faculty and staff are going to engage in a 3-part workshop between now and June about research-based ways to help students feel safe and capable in the classroom to talk across differences. Because as I said earlier, if people don't learn that in graduate school, when are they going to learn it? In this time, we also, I'm very proud to say, are realizing that we have unique access to young people at the University of Washington. While we have an undergraduate minor this week, the faculty voted unanimously to approve the creation of the school's first major, called the Major in Public Service and Policy. This will offer context, strategies, tools, and intentional practices to students who are aspiring to have a career focused on public service. And again, to do that simple thing of creating a major, again, if you're outside the university, it doesn't seem like it should be so much. It took an incredible amount of time, administrative skill, and we're really grateful to the leaders who are doing that. In all of these efforts, I think we are directly applying our organizational resilience to activate and educate a diverse array of audiences around the challenges we are facing as a country. We're trying to fight the narrative that it's all despair and equip people really practically with the change-making tools that they need. In 2024, we're also going to prioritize 2 other areas of our work that continues to deepen things we've started. First, we're going to continue to promote inclusive ways of knowing and doing. This is really sharing our expertise both in what we know about bringing people together, process expertise, and content expertise that we know about policy domains like environmental policy, social policy. But this kind of participatory approach is something that we do internally and externally. So Tatiana mentioned our equity and inclusion work. This has been really important that we've been trying to open up and do this in a living dialogue way that is about learning and change. We're also doing some real investments in trying to build the capacity to actually have external partnerships that allow us to live out the idea behind this network image. Deeper engagement, I would shout out with the Ruckelshaus Center, which is a center that is joined with Washington State University and really benefiting from the new director, Dr. Julia Carboni, who's in the audience. Our amazing digital strategies team is building and has built for us an engagement tracker app. And we're hosting clinics for people who are doing external relations work out in community to be connected to each other. To support that kind of engagement work, we're also going to continue to invest more in the Evidence Policy Innovation Collaborative. This is our platform for engagement, where we bring this process expertise in design and facilitation and the content knowledge from policy domains together. We use methods in this lab that are about putting empathy and evidence on equal footing. Our faculty are doing such amazing research in communities where community voice matters. And Bostrom is in the room. She works with the team who are helping local governments be prepared to respond to natural hazards and climate risks in a proactive way. David Suarez is also in the room, and he's been doing a lot of work about participatory grant making and how does that change philosophy of foundations and philanthropic institutions that historically hold power. But with EPIC, what we're trying to do is build an organizational support for helping our faculty increase the impact of their research. Professors Crystal Hall and Ines Jurcevic are working with our EPIC team, A.K. Sterling, Jessica Gill, and Kelly John, to bring together academics and public sector practitioners in our first Wolfley Action Lab to figure out how governments can bring their anti-racist work together with the insights of behavioral science. So in this work, we're moving behind this idea that higher education needs to just translate research to really bring research knowledge and practice knowledge into interaction through charrettes and design sessions that develop more quickly the solutions that we need. So the final priority where I feel like we're going to contribute this year because of our resilience is to actively engage in Washington to revitalize the democratic systems. As I discussed this visual earlier, one of the things I think we have to work on is this poor experience that people have with the public system, right? Our strategic partners in these efforts are agencies that are committed to making that change. We are investing in them, not only through educational programs, but through giving them access to our students in careers, in internships, and other things. In the last 2 years, under the leadership of Scott Ballard, we've also built one of these partnerships with the Secretary of State's office. They are committed to election integrity. I will also say the Secretary of State is a graduate of our EMPA program. But they want to make sure that Washington State has sound implementation of voting systems, and we're going to continue to deepen the partnership with them. The final part of our democratic revitalization work is really this partnership with the Civic Health Project. Civic health is a topic that honestly I never really thought I would ever really need to know about, because when you look at the things on the sheet, you think, do we really in the United States need to be worrying about trust? Do we need to be worrying about motivating people to volunteer or stay informed? Turns out we do. And so civic health has become a really important topic, a really important area. We, as you saw suggested in the video with the Lieutenant Governor, we hosted a summit with them, and coming out of that work is a joint legislative commission on civic health at the legislature. We're working now with the Russell Health Center to establish a new partnership with the Association of Washington Cities that are going to help local governments disagree better, helping people move from what it takes to get elected to what does it actually take to get stuff done in the world. This work, it feels to me, is so important. And because of my role, I'm also able to activate the larger university where we're beginning to have conversations about what's system-wide tri-campus response to the state of civic reality. So, in conclusion, I feel like in each of these efforts, in pathways to public service, for creating more inclusive ways, and for helping revitalize the democratic system, we are showing that we have organizational resiliency. And the people in this room are the people who are doing this work. When Wendy Lindquist and I were pulling together the images for this talk, I realized, in our collection, we have a lot of photographs of people talking with each other. A lot of dialogue. And I keep on feeling like, again, I never would have thought I would ever have to be aware of images of people talking with each other across difference. But it really makes a difference. I also say that one of the things that I've realized now leading a public organization is that kind of relational work is almost countercultural in big public bureaucracies. But I think we're trying to be the change we seek. Now, in the University of Washington context, there's a lot of details that go underneath every single item. People in this room were working on memorandums of understandings with state agencies. Got people in this room who are trying to figure out how to do better operational budgeting, right? How do you make the recording studio on this floor work so we can actually capture the lectures that we need for these blended classrooms? Or how do you actually build an app or create a better workflow for admissions or for student services? Or filing forms with the graduate students for students who are struggling to catch up. And sometimes the university imposes constraints, but I think that these day-to-day tasks are really the day-to-day things that we do to show that we're a resilient organization. I will also say that there's new leadership throughout the University of Washington in administrative roles that really makes me optimistic that it's not always going to stay this way. So in the midst of that day-to-day reality, I just want to remind people that we are, I believe, bringing incredible value to the world. I think that we are an equity-centered school of government that serves courageous change makers who want actionable strategies and skills to change the civic life that we find ourselves in. And I feel that I just want everybody to feel so proud of what we've accomplished in a short amount of time and feel confident that we have plans we need to move forward. We have the people we need and we're in the position to deliver it. And so I'm just so grateful to be standing in front of you, so grateful to have the privilege to work with you. And I'm happy to answer questions, but want to start by thanking the wonderful team that made this whole talk accessible to the people who aren't in the room, because that in and of itself is a feat. Thank you. Questions?
So can you talk a little bit more about how the civic health initiatives might be interwoven into teaching and training, like the new undergrad program or the MPA?
The question was, how are the civic health initiatives interwoven with some of our teaching and training? I think one of the reasons why I came to the Evans School 3 years ago was that this policy school understands that the problems we face are ones that both require very rigorous analysis and really intentional engagement. Some of the policy schools, as you know, don't have the recognition that both of those things are important. And so I think as we are learning from the work with local elected officials, as we're learning from the Next Gen Civic Leader Corps, what does it take to do civic engagement? We're going to be drilling that in directly into the programs. The one I mentioned with local governments, one of the courses is about how do you do dialogue, deliberation, and participatory process, because there's a rigorous methodology underneath it. So I hope that part of what we're doing is an integrated place where our research and engagement is fueling our education, and education fuels the research and engagement. Come on, people. Didn't I just say universities are a place for ideas and debate?
Since under the folks who are part of that school, last question, I'll ask one. My interest is in how the university can impact the broader community, right? And so I'm curious about what your thoughts are in terms of how will the Evans School in 2024 and beyond really have a dramatic impact on the immediate impact on how our society works here in Seattle, Washington, and maybe even nationally and globally.
Part of what I feel like, so the question was, how can we continue to maximize our external impact? So the EPIC, our innovation platform, is an effort to try and create services and support for faculty who are already doing policy relevant research, but maybe don't have all the time to think about how do we engage the right stakeholders at the right time with information that they know and is enhanced by research that we know. And so for me, it is about trying to make that lab more and more robust. We've had some real great success with the voting projects. We're doing a project on paid family leave. We work with King County. But it is trying to create more places where people come and think, wow, that meeting at the University of Washington changed X, Y, Z, Q. And we have the ability to do that. We just need to now start to scale. And some faculty already do it, but it's a very particular skill set that's hard to build when resources are limited to a particular grant or particular project. We're trying to make that a collective resource.
Actually, it's for online, yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you, Jody, for your speech, reminding us of all the values that we hold and that we've been trying to implement throughout the year. I was taking a compliment to what to Julia's question. We've heard quite a few things that make me feel optimistic about the relationship between the school and the rest of the university. And I was wondering if you could say something about your experience about how the school's place in the university has changed over the last year, especially.
Over the last year, I feel like the University of Washington is really excited to have a world-class public policy school here. And I think they are really grateful that we are becoming more of a place where people who may not have an appointment here can come and be connected to our work. There's some people in this room who have faculty appointments in other places, but now have formal adjunct appointments with us. Scott and I and Julia Carboni have just sent out an invitation to people to connect in through a network of scholars who do work related to the environmental engagement work that Ruckelshaus does, right? So we're trying to catalyze other policy-oriented scholars and decrease the barriers for them to engaging themselves. We have a wonderful relationship between the deans. And so we just see each other as friends and compatriots, and we actually bonded because so many of us were complaining about the outdated bureaucratic processes at the university, and now we have a new provost who really is starting to help on that. So I think that also, and she very clearly sees the role of impact and the unique way that our work is impacting policy problems, and values that very much. And of course, Anna Maria Kase has been a long supporter and believer in the mission of our work. This is such a weird experience of sitting up here.
Well, I did come late, so I wasn't sure if you had already talked about this, but I do think that what we're seeing in the community is that the level of community engagement and stakeholdering is changing. That the days where there is, I'm going to say, fewer watchdogs watching what elected officials are doing, that piece is growing. And we find ourselves a lot of times in spaces where we're trying to correct misstatements that's out there. And so actually, I heard Senator Wellman talk about how do we start to pre-bunk. So the idea that how do we help educate first, so we aren't always trying to be reactive to what's happening in the community. So I'm wondering, as you think about public policy and engagement, do you see some different tools that you're implementing to help with that? Because also a lot of electeds don't have policy staff, and so we're kind of stuck in a place where we're trying to figure out what to do. Meanwhile, the community is, showing up en masse, being unhappy about many, many things that we're doing to transform our communities.
I appreciate that. She is an alum and elected official. We have just really started at the very beginning stages to think about ways that we can support elected officials. Typically, we haven't thought about as an institution, certainly faculty individually have, but as an institution, what are the unique parts of your job? This partnership with the Association of Washington Cities feels to me like our beginning in that. It will be a pilot program this year. And part of the idea is we're going to pick 6 topics, and kind of do that educate first, like what is the best way of thinking about a public safety series of challenges? What are some local environmental things? And give people that opportunity to spend a day together, debating and dialoguing with a cohort of other electeds, so that when you're out in your community, you're more prepared. But we're really starting this event. Thanks for the question.
Hi, Jody. Very engaging talk. Could you elaborate a little more on the vision for the undergraduate major?
So Bill Zametta, the professor emeritus, knows that there's a long history of this question at the Evans School. When I was preparing for the faculty meeting, we first had the conversation about undergraduate major 20 years ago. And as you know, the faculty had voted in 2015 to establish a major and then hit some real flaw administratively. We have been very proactive in trying to deal with those other concerns from other departments. But it's a fairly different major than was considered before. As I understand it, the major that was considered before was almost like a light MPA program. It was fairly technical and fairly focused on a lot of the same required classes that we have in the Masters in Public Administration. The curriculum that was just approved this week allows students to have more choice about the kind of public service calling and training they want. So there are a number of required classes that we will offer that focus on policy analysis and institutional implementation. But then students will have a lot of choice being able to go to other parts of campus to get detailed information on certain kinds of policies or take some of our courses in environmental policy, in social policy, et cetera, et cetera. It's being designed so it will be a beautiful double major for people on campus, and I think that's really what we're hoping. It's also being designed so that it can really help people, I think, feel that sense of they can be part of building better solutions and skills in a variety of ways. It's not just that there's only one way to make a difference on these problems. And Grant Bloom and Susan Inman are the experts. Mary Kay is also an expert, so you should follow up with them at the reception and learn more. It's pretty exciting what they've done.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's our environmental lighting, right, John?
Yeah. So Dean Jody, thank you for this State of the School address. You know, everybody who's here and online, we're the true believers, right? We're involved, we give a lot, we're really fired up about the mission. I would love, I know maybe some of us can wring out another hour or two of work for this, for the work ahead, but as you're looking for us to recruit, to find new partners, to identify people with new capacities, what are you looking for most to help us kind of achieve the goals you have for us both for this year and beyond, as we kind of try to bring more people into the fold and more people into the work of the school?
Great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind, Scott, is that people who want to be part of solution seeking, who believe that they're not going to, read the dystopian novels and go down that narrow path, people who want to choose to be an agent in this time. We need people who bring a variety of skill sets. As you know, we have been enhanced by having people who are designers, who are videographers, in addition to the social scientists that we have here. And I think we need people who care about this magical space of rigor and relevance, and reject fundamentally that you have to choose between those two. In academia, sometimes we've been told that that's something that you can't have both of, and I think in this place, we try to maximize. I think off the top of my head, that's what I'm saying. Is there wine at this reception? Finally, this group needs to go have some wine. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much.